Tonight, former President Trump holding a, quote, rally to protect our elections, end quote, tomorrow in Arizona's Maricopa County. Maricopa County, of course, where sham election audit has made the state ground zero for Trump's big lie about a stolen election. It comes as the Washington Post reports that Trump's PAC raised $75 million this year, and that none of that money has gone to Arizona's audit or similar efforts in other states, despite Trump loudly and vocally, saying they're key to overturning the election. And that's the whole point, the election that he, of course, falsely claims was stolen from him. Sunlen Sarfati is out front.
Former President Donald Trump.
We were doing so well until the rigged election happened to come along.
Remaining fixated on the baseless claims of election fraud, pushing hard for state ballot reviews of the 2020 election results. In a steady stream of public statements and comments promoting the so-called audit of Maricopa County ballots in Arizona.
I want to congratulate, by the way, Republican state senators in Arizona and other places for their great work that they are doing in exposing this fraud.
But privately, Trump isn't putting his money where his mouth is. The Washington Post reporting that of the $75 million Trump's Save America PAC has brought in the first half of this year, the group has not put any resources into helping finance the ongoing ballot reviews he's been pushing so hard for, citing sources familiar with the finances. Instead, according to the Washington Post, that money is actually paying for some of the former president's travel, legal costs, and staff, along with other expenses, and noting the PAC has held onto much of its cash.
There are so many discrepancies, so many problems, and they've heard from so many people about the corruption and what took place.
There is no evidence of widespread fraud in the 2020 election, but Republicans in several states are responding to the former president, pushing for audits or other ballot reviews, like the one in Arizona. But who is actually funding the Arizona effort is largely shrouded in secrecy, with private fundraisers boasting they have directed hundreds of thousands of dollars to the audit, which has been run by a little-known Florida-based security consulting firm, Cyber Ninjas, not previously known for election auditing. A group with ties to Overstock founder Patrick Burns says it's raising funds to support the Maricopa audit and helping with future audits. Another group established by One America News personality Christina Bobb has also touted receiving donations for the audit.
And former President Trump is heading to Phoenix, Arizona tomorrow to talk about all of this at that so-called Protect Our Elections rally, a rally, Aaron, that is funded by a conservative activist.
All right. Thank you very much, Sunlen. And I want to bring in Krista Rose, Republican elections lawyer and the former clerk of Maricopa County Superior Court, and Abby Phillip, anchor and senior political correspondent, of course, here at CNN. So, Abby, given how much energy and attention Trump has placed on pushing the big lie and these audits, right, specifically, right, mentioning Arizona, mentioning specific audits and how they should happen, and this is the key to everything, he still doesn't put his own money into the effort to prove widespread voter election fraud? Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fundraising tool. There's nothing right now that is more motivating to Republican voters than this idea of the big lie. And Trump has been integral in using it as a tool to fund his own political ambitions. At the end of the day, this war chest that he has built up since the election has been about his next election, about keeping open the prospect that he might be able to run in 2024, and perhaps also based on the Washington Post reporting, funding his lifestyle, currently his staff, his expenses, his ability to travel around the country. It's no surprise that the candidate who claimed that he would self-fund his campaign so that he wouldn't be beholden to special interests and then turned around and took money from special interests would then do something like this. It's pretty, I think, par for the course for Trump.
That's amazing, though, as you lay it out. I mean, Chris, you were an early opponent, excuse me, of the sham audit. But obviously, this audit is certainly going to be front and center at Trump's rally in Phoenix tomorrow. I mean, it's in Maricopa County. The audit, though, has taken on a life of its own, and as you know, some Republicans have been touting it as a way to prove their loyalty to Trump, right? They've come from around the country to been like a Mecca. They've been coming to visit the location of the audit. How do you deal with this, Chris?
Yeah, well, here's the problem. And I would advise any elected official throughout the country who's thinking about replicating our audit in their county, their state, run, don't walk in the other direction, because what's happened here in Arizona is that this train has left the station, and now the people aboard have the choice of waiting for it to go over the cliff or to jump off at 200 miles an hour. But now there are no good options for this audit here in Arizona. It was first of all, it was unnecessary. Our Republican County Board of Supervisors, which is 4-1 Republican, conducted 2 audits using Election Assistance Commission approved companies, bipartisan commission, nonpartisan professional companies. 2 audits confirmed that we had had a fair election here in Maricopa County. So there was no purpose to begin with. But ever since, it's been a conclusion in search of evidence. And now that no evidence of fraud or error has been detected, they've taken to inventing statistics and facts that are just made up out of thin air about more ballots received than requested, which of course has been thoroughly debunked. And so there's no good resolution for this. I said when this started, there would be no good that could come out of this. And every day that's proven to be increasingly true.
I mean, Abby, you know, what Chris is laying out, I mean, here's the thing. When this audit, and, you know, I put the quotes around it, when this is done, whenever it is done, it's been going on and on, it still goes on and on. But then there's an outcome, and I think what Chris just said is pretty powerful, right? You can either go off the cliff or jump off the train going 200 miles an hour. When this is done, whatever that means, it could be a major flashpoint. I mean, what's at risk here, Abby?
Well, considering that there's already a conspiracy theory that Trump was going to be reinstated in August, I mean, it's all part of the atmospherics around the way in which these types of audits and the kind of false hope that it gives Trump supporters are creating, frankly, a dangerous environment in which people, you know, rank and file Republicans fervently believe this stuff, fervently believe that they're going to find something where there is nothing. And then when it doesn't happen, they are angry, they are disillusioned. That's the part of this that I think leaves people waking up at night. You know, to use Chris's analogy about whether they're going to go off the cliff or jump off the train at 200 miles an hour, I think Republicans are going off the cliff. They have already decided that they are not getting off of this train. They are going with it until the very end.
And Chris, you've led and worked on election integrity efforts for Republican governors and members of Congress, and I know you've been clear, you're going to continue to support efforts to increase election fairness. But what is your message to the Republicans out there now, many of whom are elected, who are still pushing the big lie, to try to run audits in their own states now?
Yeah, I can tell you as a Republican attorney who has worked on election integrity matters for over a decade in 5 different states that our nominee lost the 2020 election, and every minute we spend trying to relitigate that election, number one, it undermines confidence in our democracy and in our representative government. But 2, it's a minute that we don't spend talking about the issues that are going to motivate voters in the 2022 election. So the more we talk about this, you know, our audit here in Arizona may be popular within the Republican Party, but multiple polls have shown that it's anathema to general election voters. And so every minute we're talking about this, every minute we waste trying to relitigate an election that we lost is a minute we don't spend trying to win over voters that are up for grabs in the midterm elections.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And next, 2 Democrats now demanding answers after CNN learned prosecutors have enough evidence to charge Trump's longtime ally Tom Barrack last year. This as Barrack posts a massive bail. And healthcare workers across the country take... New tonight, Tom Barrack, the longtime ally of Donald Trump and chair of his inaugural committee, freed on bail after being indicted on charges of illegal foreign lobbying. That agreement including a $250 million bond, $250 million, secured by $5 million in cash. Prosecutors basing that on an estimate that Barrack is worth about $1 billion, which means they have a claim to a quarter of his entire net worth if he flees. Barrack also must wear a GPS monitoring bracelet and will now head from California to New York, where he will be arraigned on Monday. A spokesperson for Barrack previously told CNN, quote, Mr. Barrack has made himself voluntarily available to investigators from the outset. He is not guilty and will be pleading not guilty. Out front now, Ellie Honig, former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York and the author of the new book, Hatchet Man, How Bill Barr Broke the Prosecutor's Code and Corrupted the Justice Department. Ellie, let me just ask you, there's a lot of questions here about this. Days ago, prosecutors said Tom Barrack was a flight risk. They did agree to release him on bail, but I mean, the security here is stunningly high, right? A quarter of his estimated net worth. I mean, $250 million, incredible amount of money. From your experience, when you look at that, you look at how this is going, does this mean prosecutors think Barrack may cooperate?
So, Aaron, this could be one or both of two things. One, it could be that prosecutors are now satisfied that he's offered up enough of a bail package, enough cash, enough sureties, the GPS monitor that he'll have to wear, that they no longer believe he might flee. But as you said, Aaron, just a day or two ago, the prosecutors were ardently against that. They said he's an enormous flight risk. He has too much money. He has too many connections all over the world. We can't let him out. It could be that that has changed. The other possibility is it could be that they've agreed to let him out as part of some agreement that he will come in and try to cooperate. That is rare, but I can tell you firsthand, I have done that as a prosecutor. Not often, but rarely. If you think it will help the potential cooperation process along to let someone out on bail, I've done that. It's possible. We don't know. We have to wait and see, but it's in play here.
All right, so we reported earlier this week that the prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York believe they had enough evidence last year to indict Barrack during the Trump administration. And of course, that didn't happen. And there'd been, discussions that maybe this all came too close to the election. You're not supposed to bring cases like this at that time. But it is raising questions among some, including House Democrats Ted Lieu and Kathleen Rice, who are asking the Justice Department Inspector General to investigate whether Barrack's case was inappropriately suppressed, their words, by Trump's DOJ. Do you see any evidence of that?
There are questions that need to be answered here, Aaron. First of all, it is impossible for me to imagine that any competent, impartial prosecutor looked at this evidence and decided it's not enough or it's a close call. If you look at this indictment, it's 46 pages, it's extraordinarily detailed, and it's really strong proof. This is not some case built on the back of a cooperating witness who can be cross-examined. This case is built on Barrack's own words, his own emails, his own texts, things that he typed. So I have real questions about how any prosecutor who wasn't in the bag could look at this and say, hold up, we're not sure.
So I will just say, and some would say this is, what Barrack did is sort of business as usual in Washington, lobbying, foreign officials. This is how it's done. John Bolton the other day told me, the former UN ambassador, that the Foreign Registration Act, Agents Registration Act, is poorly worded and confusing, and that's part of the problem, that it could stand some updating, to say the least. Does he have a point? Is that part of the problem, the law itself?
Well, I think any law can be clarified, and I think this law could stand a bit of clarification. I agree with that, but I absolutely disagree with the notion that some have been put out there that this is just a silly sort of paperwork crime. This is intended to protect our national security against people lobbying for foreign governments that we don't know are working for foreign governments. I mean, imagine if we did not have this kind of law. You could have people with all sorts of access up to and including the president, lobbying the president, influencing our policy, who are secretly working for foreign countries. That would be extraordinarily dangerous. So this is an important law.
All right, Ellie, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
And next, more and more hospitals are telling employees to get vaccinated. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, tossing tens of thousands of doses of the life-saving COVID vaccines. Health officials in Iowa are warning that's what they may have to do in the coming days because people just don't want to get vaccinated. There isn't enough demand. So they're going to throw it away. According to the Des Moines Register, nearly 40,000 vaccine doses expire next week, headed for the garbage because less than 50% of Iowa's population is fully vaccinated, and vaccination rates there are plunged. They're down by 90% from the peak in early April. It's a really disturbing headline, and it's an alarming trend in vaccination rates that we're seeing across the country. It is one of the reasons why we're seeing a surge of new cases among mostly the unvaccinated, up 65% from last week. And more concerning, hospitalizations. They've been climbing for 3 weeks running now, up 60% over the past 14 days. And governors are now running out of patience. Here's the governor of Louisiana today, a state with just 36% of the population vaccinated and a whopping 670% increase in cases from just a month ago.
We have the highest growth rate of new cases per capita of any state in the United States of America. This really is the perfect storm. And the conditions are ripe for catastrophic outcomes for far too many individuals and families. This is a storm that we can control. We're not powerless. We can be vaccinated.
Well, that follows the Republican governor of Alabama, which one of the least vaccinated states in the country, where hospitalizations are also up 60% in just the past week.
Folks supposed to have common sense. But it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks. It's the unvaccinated folks that are letting us down.
Pretty blunt. And the governor of Mississippi, Republican, also today telling his residents the data shows they should get vaccinated and then, quote, make the right choice, Mississippi. Make the right choice. So far, only 34% of people in his state are fully vaccinated. And even in highly vaccinated areas like New York City, there are still pockets that are not getting vaccinated. Like the NYPD, just as an example. Only 43% of the largest police force in the country is vaccinated, which is just slightly better than some of the worst vaccinated states. And because of that, the city's mayor warning there could soon be a crackdown on those who are opting not to get the shot.
The Delta variant is like a freight train coming on. We got to take it real seriously. If people want freedom, if people want jobs, if people want to live again, we have got to get more people vaccinated. And obviously it's time for whatever mandates we can achieve.
More mandates. That's also what we're seeing across the country. Just today, St. Louis announcing the mask mandate, returning for people indoors, joining many other jurisdictions doing the same thing. Jeff Zeleny is out front live outside the White House tonight. And Jeff, Biden administration officials are really growing concerned about this troubling new phase of the pandemic. You heard one of the governors there saying catastrophic outcomes for far too many people and families. What is the Biden administration saying tonight?
Well, Aaron, there's no question that President Biden and his team here really have been sounding the alarm for several days. But as we head into a weekend here, we're in a dramatically different place than just a week ago. But those calls from governors, Republican governors, as well as some Democratic ones, really are music to the ears of people here at the White House, because they do believe the only way to get more people to become vaccinated is not a message here from the White House. It's from local officials, it's from friends, it's from family, even some of those Republican governors. So there is really been a dramatic shift over the last several days in terms of the degree to which people are taking the Delta variant very seriously. But the White House stopping entirely short of calling for any federal mandates. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki today said, look, it is the responsibility of institutions, individual businesses to decide this for employees. But there is a sense here that that is what it is going to take for businesses and others to start requiring this. But the White House really wants to try and stay out of this, to not be, really politicize this even more and being accused of trying to impose this on people. But as we head into a different chapter of this pandemic fight, we heard the CDC director calling it a pivotal period. This certainly is a sense the White House now has a sense of uncertainty. The economic challenges that are looming here because of the just simple unwillingness to get vaccinated is a concern. But more than that is the spread of this virus. It's the most infectious, the CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, said she has ever seen in her career. So the White House is hoping that people heed this warning and start getting more vaccinations. But more uncertainty about this disease now, Aaron, than at any other point here in several weeks, if not more than that.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeff Zeleny. New tonight, the new Capitol Hill police chief rejecting attempts from former Trump and President Trump and others on the right to downplay the deadly insurrection. Here's what he said just moments ago in an interview with our own Josh Campbell.
I cannot waste my time worrying about how somebody interprets a tape. I know what the men and women of this agency went through. I know the challenges that they faced. I also know the courage that they displayed that day.
But what's your view when people say, well, this was tourism or this was a love fest? I mean, we all saw that video of your officers on the receiving end of so much violence. As the leader of the department, what do you think when you hear it characterized that way?
Well, I don't agree with it. That's not the way I saw it. But again, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And frankly, as the chief of this police department now, I'm in a position to do things to ensure that that wouldn't happen again.
Josh Campbell is with me now. Josh, some strong words from the new Capitol Hill police chief in that interview with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a man who is new to the job. This is his first day as the new chief for the Capitol Police. And I sat down with him and asked some of the questions that are on all of our minds. And that is, what is his view of the January 6th attack, how it's being characterized, how his department is going to improve. And as you just heard him there, there have been these mischaracterizations, in his words, different than what he saw. People calling this, especially the Republican congressman, a tourism, calling this, the love fest, as former President Trump did. And as he said, that's not what he saw. He also mentioned that he hadn't had enough time to look back. He's trying to focus on trying to improve this department. Now, it's also worth noting, Aaron, that he's not just looking backwards, he's looking forwards to additional potential threats, and that's because there's this continued big lie being spread. I asked him about that, if he's concerned specifically about some of this chatter that Donald Trump might be reinstated and whether that could lead to additional violence at the Capitol. Take a listen. Does that concern you? We may see a repeat of January 6th?
I'd be a fool to not be concerned about that. I mean, that obviously, the safety and security of the U.S. Capitol, the Congress, that legislative process, those are top priorities. And I'm absolutely concerned about all of those things. And but I also know that even today, 6 months after January 6th, we are better prepared today than we were 6 months ago. We are going to be as prepared as we possibly can be, whenever we have another protest here. And look, for the for folks that never paid attention to the Capitol Police Department before January 6th, know that we have protests here almost every day. Now, and some of them are big, some of them are small, but we have protests here almost every day. I got a briefing this morning about protests that are going to occur tomorrow, and so we've prepared for them, and we're going to and the norm is, and this is the reputation of this police department for those in law enforcement circles is the U.S. Capitol Police handles these things pretty good. And that's why you never hear about them, because everything goes just the way it's supposed to go. But January 6th, it did not. But that January 6th does not define this agency. It does not define the men and women of this agency.
Said that he has gone through this report that has been put together, the so-called honorary report, looking at how his department can reform. He said that he has some questions about some of the recommendations in there. He's continuing to study that. I also asked him about whether he supports the House leadership's push for this select committee to look into the events of January 6th. He said that he supports any effort to help his department improve their processes, their training, to help try to prevent another attack like this. Finally, I asked him, one thing we've noticed, Aaron, is that there have only been a very small number of Capitol Police officers that have been permitted to speak out since January 6th. We've heard from a very small group. We will hear from a handful on Tuesday. I asked him if he thinks that his officers should be able to tell their story about what they endured on that day. He told me absolutely, they should be able to tell their stories.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Really significant in having him speak out here for the first time. To Josh, I want to go now to the delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives for the Virgin Islands, Stacey Plaskett, because she was also one of the impeachment managers for Donald Trump's second impeachment trial, and now, of course, at the heart of this investigation. Delegate Plaskett, let me just ask you to first respond to the new Capitol Police chief, right? He's concerned about the big lie and future violence, but very interesting in the context of an investigation into what happened, saying he absolutely supports all of the officers having the ability to speak out, when we know, obviously, to this point, of course, very few have been able to do so.
Sure. Well, we're happy to hear from the officers. We see them on a daily basis, those of us who are in the Capitol, and I continually give them my thanks for their heroic actions on January 6th and their continued ability and willingness to defend not only members of Congress and staff, but to defend our democracy. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of them, as well as to the Metropolitan Police officers and all of the officers who came to the call of duty on that day. I'm grateful that I'm hoping that the Capitol Police will have now a morale boost with this new police chief, and that he will work closely with this investigation, the select committee, to look at the recommendations that the committee is able to make to bolster and to support his officers.
So this does come, of course, 4 days away from the first hearing of that House Select Committee, right, that is investigating January 6th. Speaker Pelosi just sent out a letter to Democrats saying in part, and I quote the letter, "Now our imperative must be to find the truth. We must do so in a way that retains the trust of the American people in the proceedings so that they will have confidence in the truth that emerges." A few questions from this, but first this one. How confident are you that the committee will find out new answers, new information about what happened on January 6th?
Well, I'm grateful that the Select Committee was made. As you know very well, Erin, we attempted to create a bipartisan independent commission. The Senate Republicans were unwilling to support us in that. And so this Select Committee will have broad powers of investigation, the power to subpoena. I'm sure under the leadership of Chairman Benny Thompson, who has headed up Homeland Security for many years, they'll be able to get to new evidence and use their subpoena powers and their ability to really focus in and drill down on the truth to find out not only what happened on that day, but the how and the why of what is happening. I'm also really grateful that the first hearing will be hearing from those police officers, both Capitol Police and Metropolitan Police, who defended us on that day.
So, she also said in the letter, right, that you have to find the truth in a way that retains the trust in the American people of the proceedings. And obviously that's really crucial. And it's been made more challenging by McCarthy's rejection of the separate, fully bipartisan committee. Now, there are Republicans on this committee, right? There's growing speculation that Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger could join. We know he'd happily accept that. Liz Cheney, of course, is already on the committee. Both Cheney and Kinzinger have not just been critical, though, of Trump for pushing the big lie and inciting the insurrection. We know that they have called him out for that. They've also, though, vowed to fight him going forward. Here they are.
I don't want this party to be Trump's party.
I will not sit back and watch in silence while others lead our party down a path that abandons the rule of law and joins the former president's crusade to undermine our democracy.
I've been a Republican far longer than Donald Trump has, and I'm not going to let him come in and hijack my party.
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office.
Does that give you any concern when it comes to the right's inevitable push to say that this is just a one-sided anti-Trump committee?
Well, I hope not, and I don't believe that the American people will do that when they see the measured approach that this committee has taken. Listen, not only has Speaker Pelosi put a Republican among the members that she could select, although she rejected two of Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's picks, she did not reject three of them. He chose to remove those individuals from this select committee. It's our hope that he will bring individuals back and move forward with the select committee. And if not, listen, we cannot hold ourselves hostage to the machinations and the struggles within the Republican Party. The American people want answers, and we are going to give them to them.
All right. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Plaska. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
And next, Trump's PAC reportedly raising huge money off of the big lie. But when it comes to spending that money, what they told people they were going to spend it on, apparently Trump does not plan to put that money where his mouth has been. And the former president's longtime ally, Tom Barrack, out of jail just days after prosecutors warned he was a flight risk. So, what changed?